Paul Revere was born on January 1st, 1735. He was an American silversmith and a patriot during the American Revolution. The role for which he is most remembered today was as a nighttime messenger on horseback just before the battles of Lexington and Concord. His famous midnight ride occurred on the night of April 18, 1775, where he and William Dawes were instructed by Joseph Warren to ride from Boston to Lexington to warn other patriots of the movements of the British Army. The British Army, also known as the King's Regulars, had been stationed in Boston since the ports were closed in the wake of the Boston Tea Party, and were under constant surveillance by Revere and his other soldiers, as word began to spread that they were planning a move. On the night of April 18, 1775, the Army began its move across the Charles River towards Lexington, and the Sons of Liberty immediately went into action. At about 11 p.m., Revere was sent across the Charles River to Charlestown, on the opposite shore, where he could begin a ride to Lexington. In days before April 18th, Revere had instructed Robert Newman, the sexton of the Old North Church, to send signal by lantern to alert colonists in Charlestown as to the movements of the troops, where the information became known. One lantern in the steeple would signal the Army's choice of a land route, while two lanterns would signal a route by water. This was done to get the message through to Charlestown in the event that both Revere and Dawes were captured. Newman and Captain John Pulling momentarily held two lanterns in the Old North Church, as Revere himself set out on his ride, to indicate that the British soldiers were in fact crossing the Charles River at night. Riding through present-day Somerville, Medford, and Arlington, Revere warned patriots along his route, many of whom set out on horseback to deliver warnings of their own. Interestingly enough, Revere did not shout the famous phrase later attributed to him, "The British are coming," largely because the mission depended on secrecy and the countryside was filled with British Army patrols. Also, most colonial residents at the time considered themselves British, as they were all legally British subjects. Revere's warning, according to eyewitness accounts of the ride and Revere's own descriptions, was "The regulars are coming out." Revere arrived in Lexington around midnight, with Dawes following shortly after. Thanks to the warnings delivered by Revere, Dawes, and other riders, the British troops were repelled by the militia in Concord. They were harried by guerrilla fire along the roads back to Boston, and were driven out. While not particularly noted during his life, in 1861, over 40 years after his death, the ride became the subject of Paul Revere's Ride, a poem by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. The poem has become one of the best known in American history, giving the hero the recognition he's deserved.